All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. For this next video, I'm going back to memory lane in New Jersey, which I like to do a lot of on this channel, as people know. I'm joined by somebody I've known. I was thinking about this morning, uh, probably 35 years.
I think
Probably.
so. I mean, I think the first time we met might have been in your garage, actually, when I came over with the Santiago brothers who lived around the corner from you, and we just came over, and I forget if we jammed or if we had just had a band practice over at their house, and we just came over to say hi or whatever. But I think that's when I met you,
Yeah,
and
and that
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 had to be in
that
'89, maybe. I don't know, something like that.
89, 90, yeah, probably
Yep.
around that time. But before we get too deep into things, let me introduce you. It's my pleasure to welcome my old friend from New Jersey, Mr. Kevin Borland. Kevin, great to see you as always. Kevin, of course, is representing the proper way to say the product. He's got a Taylor Ham t-shirt on.
Right.
Even though it says pork roll below it, it's still Taylor Ham. So Des Cadena, if you're watching this, it's Taylor Ham for the record.
And the authority of that I have for that is, of course, my grade school, lunch menu, and that's what it always said on the menu. It said a Taylor ham sandwich. There's no arguing with that. That's
Well, that's
solid evidence for the.
right. And that's because you and I grew up in the proper part of New Jersey. Uh, in this case would be Sussex County. And we'll get
Yep.
into all of that. But for those who are watching who may not know Kevin, Kevin's been a musician for as long as I've known you. He's a fantastic player. Uh, we knew him as our guitar hero in high school coming up in the 90s. And he just put out a fantastic new album called The Harvest, which we'll get into pretty deeply because I love the record. Um, so there's a lot of history to cover. We have a lot of years that we can get into. But first and foremost, I wanted to get into how your entry into music started because, like I said, I met you 89, let's say, and that was because I was taking drum lessons from Steve Santiago, who is a friend of ours from the neighborhood. Steve's actually the person who turned me on to punk rock and essentially ruined my life. Uh, Steve and his younger brother Bobby were musicians in the area and they'd have people come over and jam. So I'd go over to their place, they'd come over to mine, and you were playing guitar with those guys at that time. So you were really into it at a pretty young age. When did music first come into your orbit and become such an important part of who you are even now?
Gradually as a child, I think, because there's a lot of music around me. I mean, my grandfather always had a guitar around, and actually in the video for like the Harvest Time song, that old dilapidated acoustic guitar was my grandfather's guitar that plays a little tapping part in the middle. And my uncles, both of my dad's brothers were professional guitar players. One's retired now and one's gone, but my uncle Michael played guitar for a living, and as far as I know, that's all he ever did. So even though they were on the West Coast, definitely influential. And my dad had a record collection. As I was growing up, I would just borrow records from it, or he had a habit of, like, what do you call it, making a cassette version of his record, so I guess he could listen to it in the car or whatever. And I would like have my little boombox in bed at night, at a very low volume, like listening to all like the Jefferson Airplane albums and all that kind of stuff that he had. And then I picked up a guitar, actually playing it myself, besides just hitting a bunch of strings of my grandfather's guitar, when I got one for Christmas my freshman year of high school, per my request. But and then from there, guitar became my main instrument for at least the next 20 years, I'd say.
Excellent. And when I first met you, I have a very clear memory of this. It may not have been the first time I met you, but it was around that time. We were at the Santiagos, and you and maybe we were at your house actually, more than I
Could
think.
have been.
And it was you and Bobby, I believe, working on a Testament cover of the ballad. I remember.
Yes.
So that would
Yes.
have been like 89, 90. So I know, hard rock and metal were pretty big for you at that part in time. You used to have hair down to here too.
Yeah,
Which
unfortunately,
I
it
did
doesn't
at
come
one
out
point.
anymore. It's like, it stopped coming out at some point.
Yeah, well, look
No
what
new,
happened to
no new
me.
hair.
Yeah. So I know, that style of music was big for you. And, this was the era too of like Yngwie Malmsteen and Satriani and kind of the guitar hero uh sort of wave that came in. Vinny,
Definitely.
there was a bunch of
And I
different.
love playing that Tesla song on stage. It's funny. I didn't even have like get the foot pedal. It probably cost like $5. So actually, I have to have somebody press the button on the amp to switch it to the distorted part after the intro. It was pretty funny, but those were great times. And I still listen to that. I still listen to Yngwie Malmsteen and that kind of
Oh yeah.
stuff too. They're definitely a big influence on my playing. I don't know so much on the songwriting end of it, but definitely taught me those kind of people are, even though I never met them, their music came into my house, and definitely that's how I learned to play guitar, was trying to imitate them to some extent. Him and Steve Vai in particular, and Paul Gilbert from Mr. Big was one of my, and from especially his Racer X stuff. I used to love to listen to that. They did an awesome Judas Priest cover on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that was definitely a great band. Of course, a couple of those guys went on to different stuff. I know
Yeah,
Travis has been in Judas Priest for 30 years now, at least. Definitely an influential band. So, I mean, that was kind of the era that we're talking about here, was when like, hard rock was still king, Motley Crue was still huge, all that stuff was massive. And um, this is now, I'm a couple years younger than you are, but we were in high school together. I think you were probably a senior when I was a freshman or sophomore. I
I
think.
think, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But we'd have talent shows at the high school, and I know you had a band. What it was Steve Santiago first in Descending Angel, right? And then
Well,
Bob.
and at the very first practice, it was both. And I think Steve was more of the singer, and then Rob the drummer. But then Steve would get behind the drum set because they're both drummers. And then I think as far as like official, like playing shows, I think Rob became the first drummer, and then after a while, when he joined his first rank band with Dan, who later became my singer in the 2000s, then Steve became our full time drummer, and we got some other people in the band too, keyboard player Tom and everybody. So it evolved over the years, but yeah, and we had a weird mix early on, was between just some random covers, and I say random, they're all rock, but like, everything from Poison and Kiss, which they liked, and to the mom, we did like Queen in Love by Malmsteen and stuff that probably no one in the crowd had ever even heard of except maybe you. And then we always threw in like one or two originals at each show because I was writing even back then, and with Rob too. Rob helped a lot with the music writing.
And Descending Angel was the band that you had. That was your group at that time, and you had a female vocalist, if I recall,
Missy,
Missy.
yes, Missy, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm pretty darn sure I still have your demo somewhere here from 92
Well,
or
when we get to the new album, there are some things I did with the manufacturing in that intentionally to make it a little more like the original Descending Angel album. So
really.
I tried to put a little nostalgia into it. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of nostalgia that, informs the new record, and we'll definitely get into that.
yeah.
Um,
That original cassette is almost unlistenable.
oh,
But
that's
you know what
right.
happened with that, and it's an interesting story, and I think it's probably one of the things that pushed me towards like music production, which is almost all what I do now. I mean, we were left basically in a recording studio by ourselves in, I don't know what you call that, maybe near Oak Ridge or something like that, back towards that way. And the guy who we had paid to record that album and we had no experience at all. I think we were sophomores in high school or juniors in high school at the time. Um, was We had a gig doing sound or something for MTV Unplugged. So he was driving into the city or wherever he was doing this, or and if you're like, okay, you just handle the controls. And I had no idea how to use a mixing board or anything like that, and certainly never produced an album before. But I loved it. I felt like I was like flying a spaceship. I mean, there's so many controls and things to play with, and you know, but that's why that album sounds like it was, probably made you could barely hear the bass on it for one thing, but that's all right. It's on cassette, so people think the cassette just got old.
That was that was Jim Frint on bass, right? Wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
just saw him the other day, actually. Yeah,
No kidding.
yeah.
My first ever public performance as a band member was a group I had freshman year of high school called Suspended Animation with Josh Polhemus,
Oh,
who
I remember him. Yeah.
I still hear from Josh now and then. But
Tell
Jim,
him I said hi. It's been probably 30 years since I've heard from him.
oh yeah, I'm gonna definitely tag him when I'll tag all the old guys that I'm still in touch with when his video goes up for sure.
I had dinner with Rob Santiago the other night too, like 2 nights ago.
Wonderful. I love
So
Bobby.
we're
I
all
haven't
still
seen
friends.
him in forever, but
Yeah.
um, the Facebook thing is nice because at least it helps sort of keep people somewhat in touch, although Facebook is devolving into AI art and political arguments and not so much.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Um,
on there all the time though.
yeah, I try.
Not posting political stuff, but I am guilty of posting AI stuff. Hmm.
But Jim was the bass player in the first band I ever played with in public. He filled in on bass. We did one song. Our entire career was one song at a talent show, which I think Descending Angel actually played. Uh,
Yeah.
and we did Silent Lucidity by Queensryche. So that was my official entry into, you know, a 30 plus year existence as a live drummer. It all started there. But I mean, so Descending Angel was out there. You were playing shows. I had Nick
Yeah.
Morrow on a few months back. We're talking about some of those old venues.
Some of the same places. Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially Ashley's up in Greenville. That was really, I think, the most, I don't know if you want to call it friendly towards musician place around, especially for young, because there may have been other places, but I think most of the places in New Jersey wouldn't let us in because of our age.
yeah,
So that was up in the New York side, but they were super friendly. They actually paid us, and they always stood by their word, and you know, so I like playing there a lot. Then of course there was Obsessions, and that's sort of on the other end of the spectrum.
yeah, yeah,
Have you selling tickets and things like that? To be fair, I mean you're supposed to bring in a crowd, but I don't think I ever made a profit from Obsessions. Not that that was the goal, but the goal was to get your friends out there and see you play and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
But
I mean, I don't know how much I want to give Bill Starvakis, who passed away a few years
oh, I
ago.
didn't know that.
But I mean, look, it was a lousy setup, you know.
Hmm. But it
Having
was also a place that was fun for kids to hang out and listen to new
exactly.
music that they would have never heard of. So I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
And it was critical because where else was there to go either to
And they
play?
also let the young people play, and that's another thing that they did that some of the other places didn't around there.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was Obsessions, there was Ashley's in Greenville, which later became Club Kicks.
Oh,
There was-
I think I went back to it years later and I had like a what do you call it? Like a rodeo bowl in there and
oh,
stuff. It looked
really?
pretty neat. Yeah, I wonder if they're still in business. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything in years. I split New Jersey the first time in 2003. Uh,
Okay,
and have been back and forth, but I haven't lived there.
about the same time as me. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, that was kind of the 90s era. A lot of different, if you mentioned First Rank, that was a band that was around back then. That was Bobby's band. Uh,
yeah.
of course, we had Flatus, who have,
Oh
rolled
yeah.
forever. Um, there was a decent number of things happening. The Rusty Nail and Parsippany was going on at that time as well. Mick
I
the
lived like 3 blocks behind there at one point in Lake Hiawatha for a little while.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, that was happening too. And
Hmm.
then, you know, I know as far as you and I are concerned, we've obviously reconnected in the years that have followed.
Yeah,
You graduate high school, I graduate, go to college, end up moving to LA. So there was a bit of a span of time where I wasn't kind of following what you were doing. So I
and I'm
know,
guilty of the same. You
yeah.
know,
Well, we
but at some point, I
reconnected.
think Pig Face got a little big where it was kind of impossible not to know. So
Yeah, yeah, and
that's
I,
what you
I
were
I
doing
must
anyway.
say, I saw you on the Pig Face tour. You came to
Yeah,
New
of
York to
course.
see the
Yeah.
show, and I really appreciated that. There were people down the block from that show who didn't make it, and the
I
fact,
would have liked to go to the Chicago one, the reunion before that too, but it just was bad timing as far as stuff that I had going on that particular day. But
yeah,
I would have made it out there if I could too.
But it was awesome that you came to New York, man. You know, it's all these years later to see somebody from literally ground zero. I mean, I hadn't even done anything yet when I had met you and had seen you guys jam. And it was you guys who really kind of lit the fire in me to do it myself, you know. So that led to that first band in high school and then led to everything that's happened since. So it all kind of starts, you know, in the same small town in Jersey, you know. So to see you
Yeah,
at
yeah.
that gig, you know, I mean that's still the biggest band I've been a part of, you know. So to see you at that gig was pretty cool. And
I
you're
think in our little neck of New Jersey, it's the same kind of thing. It just keeps going back. Because I would probably say the same thing about Mike Lawler being maybe what got me into, like, I mean, he didn't start me playing guitar or anything like that, but certainly was someone that was before me that gave me the idea. Oh, maybe I can get up on stage and do this, at shows and things like that, as opposed to just sitting in my house and you know jamming on my guitar.
oh yeah, totally.
And I'm sure
Rasputin.
there were plenty around there before him. I mean.
Yeah. Well, his band Rasputin. I mean, they were part of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
hard rock thing at the time, and they were excellent. And of course, you know,
Passion and Intensity. That was a great song.
yes, I still have that demo somewhere, actually.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, I held on to all
They
that.
had a great stage show too. It's the Rasputin I'm talking about. The singer would get up there and going like this with his eyes and stuff, and the drummer was nuts. He was going.
Yeah, they were a
They were a
great
fun band, a
band.
fun metal band, and of course Mike's a great guitar player.
Yeah, still is, still is. I
Yeah,
saw him
yeah.
a couple years ago. I was down in Jersey. I went to this place called the Airport Pub. I think that's what it's called. I think, and he played for like 3.5 hours.
That's what he always does. And if he plays for an hour, it's like, oh, and I got to go play somewhere else that night for another hour. He'll book like three shows the same night for like an hour each, and like go to.
Yeah, he's fantastic even now. And
Yeah,
of
yeah,
course, you know, down the road from where we went to high school, the Misfits guys had set up camp. You know, they had the
yeah,
teen shop,
yeah.
so a lot of us ended up going there eventually and you know, doing things with those guys. So the Misfits were kind of in the mix too. So, you know, in retrospect, although Sussex County is traditionally a very boring place, there was actually a hell of a lot going on at the same
Yeah,
time too, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
You know, people were booking shows
Hmm.
independently, and this is before the internet. Now it's easy, but back then, you know, you had to make the phone calls and put up the flyers and do all those things. And eventually, record stores started popping up in the area. You know,
I
um,
still have a bunch of the Descending Angel flyers. Oh my God, they were drawn by hand by.
I
We
found
even
one.
never mind not having the internet. I didn't even have Photoshop back then, or or Microsoft Word.
Yeah, yeah, the fly. Remember the really lousy flyers? They were done with like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Microsoft Word, and you know, it
And
was
like for the next show, it actually literally take scissors and cut pieces of the old flyers on and like put a new picture or something, or change the date, because there wasn't even software. At least I didn't have any software to do that kind of stuff back then.
well, how's this? Remember we would print out flyers and they were so old it was like on the sides of the page they had like the little circles from the printer and you'd have to
Yeah,
tear
yeah,
the
yeah,
sides off
yeah.
before you went to the photocopy machine and made your flyer.
All of our like set lists and like lyrics and stuff like that we had printed out, it's all were exactly what you're describing, and then you just have the holes on the side and like some handwritten notes over it. I'd say what chord something came in on or something.
I
Oh
found a
yeah.
flyer not too long ago. I was looking for something else, and that's how it always happens. I'll look for something else and find some treasure. I found a flyer for Never Never. Remember that band,
Mm.
Steve's
Hmm.
band?
Yeah.
And I think that was like a hand-drawn thing, if I recall. I think they were playing Obsessions actually. Um,
I think I've seen them play there a couple times.
yeah,
They play around everywhere. I haven't seen that guitar player in a long time. His name Ed Chang, I think.
Ed Chang. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, but he had that whole YouTube vibe going with the resonant string sounds and the delay and stuff, and it really fit the. I don't know if you want to call it almost like a precursor to, what do they call it? Like when the kind of music where you stare at your feet, or what do they call it?
the shoe
Foot gaze.
game, shoe game.
But
Yeah,
she was a little more energetic than that. I mean, she would like really get into like some of those parts of the song. That was they were good. And whoever did their record did a fantastic job.
yeah, yeah. I used to go see those guys rehearse back then. I
Yeah.
think I'd probably go up with Steve. That would have made sense. And I
Yeah.
remember they had like a long list of like 40 songs, originals and
Mhm.
covers, and they just blow through it. They were a really tight band. I know that guy Mark, the bass player, he ended up starting a label at one point, called Jiffy Pop, I believe.
Yeah, last
He
I
had like
saw
a
him was in
whole
New York
thing.
City, and I forget. I forget what the circumstances were, but I think he may have been at the same show that I was going to or something. I can't remember, but I ran into him, but that was again at least 10, 15 years ago. But he used to jam in play in our basement sometimes with us too, and we always had like a New Year's party every year, and it wasn't really a party. It was just a bunch of musicians got up and down and jammed in my basement. But I don't
So
remember if he went to the New Year's parties, but I know he'd been over the house before and played with us too.
yeah, yeah, and that it was a pretty tight knit scene back then.
Hmm.
And what's really wonderful doing a channel like this is, yeah, it's great to have Erie Vaughn from Danzig on or Ben from the Sisters of Mercy. How could it not be? But the most fun I have doing this channel is stuff like this, like connecting with
Yeah,
people I
yeah.
grew up with and, share some history and talk about, most importantly, what's happening in the here and now. Um, and I know in recent years, you never stop playing music, which I think is amazing. Um, and I
I
know,
took breaks from doing it live, but when I did, I was recording or something. So I never completely stopped music, but I think it would be almost impossible to. I'd like feel like I was missing something from my life.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I know you've done solo music in recent years. How many solo records do you have uh, out at this point?
If you count prequel, five. If you don't, then not. Prequel was kind of like it wasn't a compilation because it was re-recordings, remasters, and remixes of basically songs before the other four albums that would have never seen the light of day had it not be. There's a remake of our favorite Descending Angel song on there that's completely re-recorded and that's piano part and everything. All the way through college band songs that no one would. There weren't even in college. They didn't have selfies yet or people in there with their phones recording video or anything. So people would have never heard any of these songs otherwise. So I would consider that a fifth one because it's new, mostly new material to everybody except me.
Right, right, right. Well, just recently, like just in the last couple weeks, you put out a vinyl album,
My
which
first vinyl. Yeah.
yeah, your first vinyl, and my filter is likely not going to cooperate here, but I want to see if I can get this up here. Oh, okay.
Almost there. Look, look.
Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can get this. Come on. Come on. There you
There
go.
you go. There you go.
Okay. All right. And that is The Harvest, your most recent album.
Yes.
And it's I don't want to mess with the vinyl too much because it's beautiful, but it's on
I already scratched mine doing the unboxing video. I have to open another one so I could listen to it better.
um, beautiful yellow vinyl. Speaking of Jersey.
All
Uh,
right.
so first of all, congratulations to you on putting out a vinyl album. I think that's
Thank you.
I love getting stuff like this because obviously these days everything is very digital
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
obviously a convenience factor with that. My next thing's going to be digital only. But I love the fact that you put in the effort to do a vinyl album. And
Yeah,
the
I
other,
used to do like a lot of CDs and stuff for like the first ones, but now it seems like everybody mostly digital or vinyl. So and I always wanted to have a record of myself, because I never did vinyl. And by the time my last album, I was, I'd made the CDs or whatever, but I wasn't trying to sell them or anything like that. I pretty much just used them as business cards because they became so cheap to make, and which is great, but all the sales, what little there was of the digital and the streaming and stuff, and I handed them out to make connections. I went to like music conferences. I usually go to the one either in Nashville or I went to the one in Austin a couple of years ago. But I like to go to those things too, the ones that give classes and you see some of the new technology that's out there for making music and stuff.
Excellent. So the album is called The Harvest, and I have to tell you, it's one of my favorite albums of the year that I've
Oh,
heard.
Thank you.
And it's a very interesting listen, and it's one of the most eclectic albums I've heard in a long time. And I get a lot of stuff sent to me. And I listen to a lot of what you would, well, what could be called like sort of left of center music. Um, this album is eclectic. It's very inventive. There's a lot of things going on I didn't expect. I didn't really know what to expect, honestly, but I was still very surprised when I heard the record. Um, so let's get into that because I want to really let people know about this new release and what it's about. It's I guess we can call it a concept album, right? It's
It
about
is, and I
more,
think besides prequel, the last four of the solo albums have all been to some extent concept albums. It's kind of like where I start at this point, when making a record or an album or whatever, is kind of what the idea is, some ideas for what each song is going to be about, and some melodies for the chorus, and then usually that's done in like a week, and I spend an entire year fleshing it out into like turning it into actual music. So the concept of this one was, what it's like to be a stranger in your hometown if you've been away for so long, as both of us have. When you go back as an adult, what's it like? And I actually did, to make this album, I rented an Airbnb up in northern New Jersey for 2 months, and saw what it was like to go back, not necessarily my hometown, but at least that part of New Jersey. Um, and some things were just as expected. It was great being there, and some things, it's never the same. You can't reclaim your childhood. And I think harvest was, the word harvest used in that was both for the time of year and also for trying to harvest your childhood, if you want to call it that, by going back to where you came from. Maybe after when I lived there, I was broken. I was just a kid, and then even when I came back for a couple years later after college, uh, but then to go back and you actually have time to go and rent a place, and you actually have some money to spend, and see what it would be like to actually have lived there, as an adult. If like try to take start where you left off, and at first it's great, and it was the trip was great, still is, but little by little you realize it's not the same place, and there's some things, everything's a little different, and everyone's grown up, and some of your neighbors have died, and some of them, and half of your, almost all the neighbors are people you've never met before because they've all been replaced by new people that have moved in, and then also then you see some of the same people, and some of them, you click with just like you never missed a beat, and some of them you don't really relate to anymore, even though you may have been friends years ago. And a lot of that's not because they've changed, because I've changed too.
right.
And it's part of I think part of going through the album is the side A is, it's definitely much more upbeat. There's less, piano on it, and it's sort of the excitement of going, of taking this journey, and what my expectations are. The first song, Maplewood Life, is a true. I intended on living in Maplewood, and then things happened in my life, and I ended up in Washington D.C. for like 15 years instead. And then the excitement of going back, and then as you turn the album over, it starts getting towards not depressing, but more definitely more melancholy, and more reflective about whether I'm better where I am, as opposed to trying to fit into this life that sort of is, there's been a split in the roads, and you really can't go back to that road. But maybe you could still enjoy the diners and the festivals and stuff, just, and the nostalgia that they bring to bring back those memories is perhaps how it's best put into my present life, as opposed to trying to actually relive that.
Yeah, yeah, I get it entirely. Not so much in the last year. But I mean, I still hit New Jersey maybe, you know, half a dozen times a year, even in the last year. But there was a time, uh, for a number of reasons, I was hitting Jersey pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So I did experience, so much of it was familiar in Sussex County, and a lot of it had changed. Uh,
Yeah,
but that's life, and I think we're both at a
yeah,
certain point in our lives where we're not going to get certain things back because they just don't exist,
yeah.
or people have gone upstairs. That's just the way it is in life. Um, One thing I really loved about the album is and for people from Sussex County who are watching this, there are so many references to Sussex County on the album. Uh, but well,
Farm and Horse Show, for example. Spaghetti Eddie. The
there,
guy
there,
at he's a vendor at the Farm and Horse Show that used to give me free spaghetti when I used to sell ride tickets there.
yeah, yeah. And there's a song called "Bar at the Ski Resort," so we all know what that is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I made that specifically part of my trip to go hang out there. And actually, that's a just a random true story about hanging out and meeting some new people that moved into the to that part of Sussex County. And you know, this time I could stay. Before it was just I was too young, and I would go there, see a band play with my parents or something, and they'd sneak me in or however. I think it's a ski place, so they let kids in or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. 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 Musically speaking, it's we talked a lot about like hard rock and stuff in the beginning. This album is not that. Um, putting my
no, not at all.
putting
I
my
tried to put in some more guitar solos because some of the older fans that I had complained that there weren't enough guitar solos on the prior album, but it's still not a guitar album by any means. I just tried to sneak a little more of that in there and that's appropriate if it's an album about nostalgia to incorporate some more elements from your past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's more of a singer-songwriter album
Yeah, yeah,
than a
definitely.
guitar album. And like I mentioned, the eclecticism of it. If I were to put my music journalist hat on for a minute, I would describe it perhaps as outsider music, but I want to be careful when I say that because when I say outsider music, it may suggest a certain level of ineptitude that's not on this album. So I don't want to paint that picture. But it's left of center music. Yeah, I hear a bit of They Might Be Giants in there. I hear the Pixies, I hear Daniel Johnston. Lyrically, especially on diners and festivals and Bar at the Ski Resort. Lyrically, I'm hearing some Tom Waits influence in there. Um, it's definitely an album written by somebody of your age, referring to that part of Jersey.
No, you're absolutely right. Oh man! By the way, They Might Be Giants was one of the coolest concerts I went to, and I'd never even heard of them before that. But because of its location, I saw them in Ortley Beach, and they did this show called Surf Stock with like 20 bands, and you're standing there in the beach. That was yes, you've nailed it as far as like some of the influences and
Yeah,
the time period. You're absolutely right. I mean, they're older influences. Yeah.
but like I said, it's definitely a different kind of album, and it says a lot of things. And I would wholeheartedly recommend anyone from Sussex, uh, you know, uh, whether or not you knew Kevin back in the day, get the album because there's a lot of references that are very specific to that part of New Jersey, that we'll get.
Yes.
Like I listen to it, I'm like, I know exactly what you're referring to. I can see it in my mind.
Yep.
Um, but even if you don't live in Sussex, it's worth listening to the album because of the themes in it. It's about that coming, like you said, coming back to a place as an older man, and I think we're both
Yep.
experiencing that at this stage of life. You go to a place. I lived in LA for a few years. I went back there, I think in 2018, and it wasn't a place I lived in by any means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely changed, completely changed. So hold on to what you have at the moment because it's going to go away, you know.
I think this is a little more accessible as a topic too than some of my past concept albums. I mean, the first one I did when I first, after my divorce was sort of about the divorce. But it was more about, embedding myself in a Chinese restaurant, which is sort of how I moved to Florida and, from Washington, D.C. and just quit my job as a lawyer and decided I was gonna deliver Chinese food for a year and a half. And it's the stories about that. And I don't think a lot of people have had that exact experience, so maybe not as relatable as this album. And then the one after that was about, life on the genetic genealogy trade show circuit that probably people haven't as, really experienced. This is much more accessible. Everybody has gone back to their town, so maybe it's a little more less music for me and more music that everybody could like.
And we should mention this is all you on this album. Um,
Oh yeah. Except I got Miko Reed singing background. Well, I don't know if you call it back, more of a duet on the These Houses Look So Small. And I had asked a couple people from New Jersey to do it, but I was kind of on a tight time scale, and one of them had COVID and couldn't do it. And then the next person, but anyway, I ended up finding someone else that was from California, but related to the same thing about boardwalks and stuff. So had her, I found her online. Saw her YouTube video, and I was like, oh, voices, she could hit those high notes. And I thought she did a good job on that. And she also did some backgrounds on it. But other than that, oh, and okay, on the last album, I had somebody mix like two or three, maybe four of the songs for me. This time, I liked his work, so I had him do it entirely. And this is a guy named Draft. Narratives is his real name, but Thai people they go by their nicknames. So he worked with me in a Thai restaurant in Virginia years ago, and then he moved back to Thailand and went to music school. We used to jam after work sometimes on acoustic guitars, and I sent him some work to do after because he studied mixing and engineering and stuff. So I liked what he did. So this time I trusted him with the entire album, and I just sent him the tracks. And as far as playing everything myself, there's a lot of I don't play every single I don't play the violin, although I bought one yesterday at a thrift store. So those are violin synths, but it's me playing the violin synths. And in some cases, like the drums, they're sequenced, but they're sequenced by me. It's not like I'm just using someone else's beats or anything. I'm literally putting every beat on the staff. Although this album has one song where I'm actually behind an electronic drum kit, and that is Maplewood Life. And I sent when I sent I usually for the drums, I just because they're typically done with a synthesizer, I just send the drum stems. I don't for the mix because they're already mixed nicely before, it just saves some money and saves some time because they're already being done with the same synthesizer, even so I get an email from Thailand and he's like, well, do you think you could send me the individual drum tracks for Maplewood Life? Because, because I'm actually playing it and it's not just like in perfect time. And, and some drums were too loud and too low as opposed to when you just sequence them on the, but that song I did play the drums on. I actually got ripped off on I tried to buy an electronic drum set from the internet from China, and it never came. Let's say, and they got my money and they used my frequent flyer miles to buy a round trip ticket to Tokyo. But I got that back, and then like my ex-wife felt sorry for me, and she picked up a drum kit for me, and so I ended up getting that drum kit, and I didn't have time to like really get back and because I dabbled with drums. I was in marching band playing drums back in high school, but I've never really been a drummer. But I did want to put one song on it and where I was actually playing drums, even if it really frustrated and made my mixer guy life miserable trying to make it sound good and quantize it.
Now, are you or have you already brought this soul material you've done into a live setting? Is that
Not since the Harbor City Meltdown album. That was the first out of the five. And one of the main reasons is I just don't have a band. So it's pretty much I'm not so much a fan of like watching like somebody get up there with an acoustic guitar and play 10 songs in a row, but that's pretty much what it has to be unless you have a band. Unless you want to use tracks, which is fine. I'm not one of those people that hates tracks. I mean, if it makes your music sound good, that's fine, as long as you're honest about what you're playing and what you're not, right? But no, I haven't really since that. I played Charlotte in Charlotte, which was kind of fun. That was off the first album. I booked myself at a place in Charlotte to play my song Charlotte for people. But I did like maybe 7 or 8 gigs, acoustic gigs for the first album, and then on the others I just mostly didn't have time because that album was still when I was delivering Chinese food as opposed to I eventually did come to my senses and go back to lawyering again, and you know
yeah.
it was fun, but being broke is hard. It's better to be employed.
Yes. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Um, I know, this vinyl edition of the album, is relatively new. But I also know in a lot of artistic minds, when something is finished, the question becomes, how soon can I start the next thing? So where are you as far as, future work on your own steam and new ideas moving forward?
Well, traditionally, in every single one of these albums, I've written in January. And I think it's just because I have a kind of a practice of like reflecting on my life, like around New Year's time, and not in a negative way or anything, but just I like to go somewhere by myself sometimes, take a little vacation, think about the past and year and what I could do different in this year, set some goals and stuff like that. And usually the material comes out about that time. And I almost want to say, since they are concept albums, I'm not sure I've lived it yet, whatever the next album is going to be about. um, so I'm not 100% sure, and it'll probably be a lot of what happens in the first next couple months. Will probably end up be what the album's about, because they're about real life subjects. It's about
Yeah.
my life, every single one of these. So I think I just haven't lived it yet. So probably around January I'll come up with something.
Cool. Yeah.
I
Well,
have a lot of music ready for it though, because I have like, you heard the Eddie Van Halen vault for guitar. I have one for that's just my cell phone vault. So if I'm thinking, come up with something and I'm just humming along with something in the car, and I'm like, that's not a song that I've heard. That's something that's made up. I whip out my cell phone and, I record, even if I'm just humming, and save it in my computer. And then when it comes time to actually put a record together, I tend to have like hundreds of melodic ideas and stuff that I wrote from before and see if any of them match the themes of whatever it is I'm trying to write about. That's kind of been my process. So the music's probably already ready to go, not recorded and anything fancier than a cell phone with my little humming, but the topic of the album I haven't decided yet.
well, I'm anxious to know where it ends up. You know.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah. So where
Yeah.
can people get the vinyl of the current album?
For my distributor stopped doing vinyl about 2 years ago. So I decided just to put it on eBay because it's really easy for me because they print the shipping labels, they take care of sales tax. I don't have to worry about any of that crap. I could just pop it up there and people can get it. And, I ordered, I didn't learn my lesson, but I ordered like 50, CD mailers from China, and they're ready to go out. Well, I've sent some out already, but mom sends them out, takes them to the post office if somebody orders them on eBay. That's pretty much the current version of distribution for these things. And I'll get you the link for that as well. And of
Yeah.
course, for people that don't have record players, that it's streaming and all you have to do is ask Dyslexa to play, The Harvest by Kevin Borland, and she'll do it. I didn't want to wake her up, but
And I'll include links in the video description where people can go to
yeah,
check out
yeah,
this album, which again is called The Harvest, and the past work as well. And I know
yep,
you've been very kind. You've been sending me music for years now,
yep,
which
yep.
I really appreciate. I'm happy to have a medium now to, discuss the current stuff because I think this is your best work that I've heard.
It's
Uh,
my favorite also. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think you've arrived at a very interesting place musically, lyrically, creatively, and it's a real pleasure to see that, knowing you for so long and seeing you back in the day as a kid, you know,
yeah, yeah.
jamming at the Santiagos, which I used to,
Church dances. I almost forgot about the church dances. That was our other biggest gig. We had a recurring, what do you call it, a residency at the St. Jude's Church, playing all the youth dances.
hitting the big time, man, I'll tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it was. I mean, back then, it was like playing Madison Square Garden, getting a show like that, or
It
playing.
was. First of all, their crowd size was actually decent, but more importantly, it was all people we knew. So it was like getting to
Like,
play in front of your friends. And I come from a background of doing like math and physics and stuff like that, and I was always kind of nerdy all through up through. But that would be, actually be get to go out and be cool for a night, and then let the artistic and the cool side out, as opposed to the math and science nerd that I was in real life. So
well, it's great to have this album because, like I said, we kind of came up together, and there were a bunch of years there when we were off doing our lives, and
yeah, yeah,
we reconnected. I guess it's been maybe 10 years now. Um, but to get an album like this and to hear you where you've arrived, not only in life but as a musician, and it's like, wow, okay, it's a real pleasure to see. And there's a lot of people we came up with who are doing well.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And
so,
I think no small part of it either is besides like everybody influencing each other and having a scene and all that was also, the music education in our particular school system. Anyway, I know we went to different grade schools, we went to the same high school, but I I don't know when I say this to other people, I don't know if I've ever met anyone ever that says that they were required as part of their music program for like not being taking a music class, but like in freshman year art survey was required to play a part on a multi-track recording. You know, our music teacher, Mr. Zatorsky, had us record Kokomo from scratch, and everybody in the class had to pick a different instrument. And that's actually one of the reasons I asked for a guitar for Christmas that year, is because so I think there was a lot of that going on too in the background. We came from a very musical place.
yeah, yeah.
And also in the high school, the support from like Mr. Remley, who did those talent shows and stuff like
Yep.
that. Me and Mom actually had dinner with him and his wife the other day too. We hit some people up when we stopped by New Jersey on the way back from a convention I was at Baltimore. But but yeah, I mean, him running those, and that's kind of taking a chance too. I don't know if the people would do that nowadays in high schools. Give kids a stage to get up there and rock and play whatever kind of music they want, and uh, definitely had some help from teachers and education folks trying to really push music and support that. I felt like anyway, and even in
Yeah.
grade school, we had Mr. Manelovic helping me try to learn piano and stuff.
Yeah, I hope it's still like that there.
I hope so too. I haven't been to Wallkill or Hardyston, in a while to visit, but I hope so.
Yeah, I haven't stepped foot in that school since maybe 97, 98, you know.
Probably around the same time. I think the last time I was there, the only teacher that was still there was Miss Tarabokia, the Spanish teacher,
Oh yeah.
or at least any of the teachers that I had for any of my classes. But yeah, Mr. Emily, I still see him every summer. We go up. Typically, this year I came later. My brother's birthday is in July, so he was up north and I was down south until recently. So that would be the time of year I'd go up to New Jersey every year, and we'd plan it. So usually we take turns, me and Mr. Emily, picking which band we wanted to see at Stone Pony. And every year we'd go to a concert. I think he picked like Primus and Clutch and things like that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I
He
mean,
really likes Humphreys McGee too, and he turned me on to some of that kind of music recently. I always like Primus stuff.
oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're absolutely right about the schooling that we came up in. In hindsight, it's crystal clear that we actually, like I said, for as dull and as boring as Sussex County is and was, I'm sure it's still a nightmare for people growing up, but we really did have supportive network for stuff like this. So you did
Yep.
have the talent shows and you had hubs, you had Sussex County Music and the
Oh yeah.
that whole thing. You had, a little bit later record stores like CDs R Us in Newton. There were places down in Denville. And then you had the whole punk wave that happened, and the hall shows that were popping up. So it really, and again, we all had the specter of the Misfits too floating around,
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I think Descending Angel was even the name of a Misfits song, even though I didn't pick the name for that band.
yeah,
Is it
it was
not?
a later Misfits song. I think you had the name first,
Did we
actually.
have it first? Well,
Yeah.
they sure didn't copy us, so it must have been a coincidence then.
But it actually was a fairly rich environment that we came up in hindsight.
Yeah,
I'm glad to have gotten my education that way, you know.
yeah, definitely.
And the fact
Yeah.
that obviously it
Does
worked.
Mike still run? Does Mike run Sussex County Music, or is Sussex County Music still there? First of all,
I believe it is. I believe it is.
okay.
I don't know, and I apologize to Mike if he's seen this, and it is the case. I don't know if he's
Well,
still.
I'll tell you what. Next time I go to New Jersey, I haven't been to the store in a long time. I'll definitely have to stop in there. I think it's been a good 10 years since I've stepped foot in the store, but just because I'm not usually up there for music purposes.
Precisely. I haven't stepped foot in that store probably, well, I'll tell you when it was. It was 2007 was the last time
Okay.
because I bought drums there. So
Okay.
It's been a while. But I still keep in touch with Mick. Obviously, he's been on the channel.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was great to see him on your the interview with him because I haven't seen him since I moved from New Jersey. I don't think. Actually, I did. I think I went to one of his concerts once with Rob one night because we'd stopped. That was probably the last time I'd been to the music store was when we stopped there, and he's like, "I have a show tonight. You want to come?" And we're like, "Yeah, of course."
yeah, I've had these whole blocks of time where I haven't been anywhere near that part of Jersey. I've lived in
Yeah,
New Hampshire now 15 years. I go down there now and then, but as you said, it's not necessarily for those purposes. It's, I'm staying at a friend's house or I'm going to a show and then I got to bounce back. And I had this whole LA thing that took me away from what was
mm,
happening in Jersey. But for the most part, I mean, the majority of people back then are still around.
right, right.
Um, and in many cases, still doing music. The guys I was playing with a little bit later in high school, the Anotherins guys, they're still around. Still talk to them all the time. So there's always a pull back to that area no matter what.
I want
Whenever
to say I saw
um,
a Facebook ad for From Good Homes recently.
yes,
So yeah, yeah,
all roads lead to the same place. Every time I drive on 23, I think to myself, I'm still on this friggin' road. Like, no matter where I go in life, no matter what experiences I have, I'm always going to end up driving on Route 23. No matter what, it's going
yeah,
to come up
yeah.
eventually. I have a buddy in Sparta. I stay at his place now and then. Always driving on 15, always driving on 23. I'm like, I'm 48 years old. It's been a long time doing this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And my mom's two sisters, they live up in Morris County. So um, every year I'm in that part too, at least for a couple of days, but usually visiting family.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So nobody ever really leaves. It's kind of like the mafia,
Yeah.
with fields. You just never quite leave your roots, always drives.
Yeah. Good old Pochuck Mountain.
Yes. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you talking about the new album. I appreciate the new album in general. As I said, there'll be a bunch of information in the video description for people to track down the vinyl. I would recommend you do so. Support Kevin, support this album because it's a really nice document of certain things that we all know. And as we get older, we cherish them more. So use that as the soundtrack. It's getting to be it's already October up here. It's
Yeah.
be that nice fall time of year.
It's not a coincidence that when this vinyl is coming out is at harvest time.
Yeah, exactly. So if you guys need a soundtrack down there for the weather, it's this album. So definitely, do your best to pick it up and check it out. Um, Kevin, I love the fact that we're still talking 35 years after the fact, man.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on. And I love what you're doing too. And both the aspect of the local people that I haven't seen in a long time coming on your show. And also, I mean, you've had some great guests, Tracy Bonham and Jack Russell. It's sad to see him go recently, but, that was the first time I'd ever like heard him talk because he's been, in my house musically since, I was a kid when we used to go deep sea fishing with my dad. And I'd have my, Walkman playing, highway nights and things like that as we were riding, to the down to Point Pleasant to catch the boat or whatever at like 4 o'clock in the morning. But it was nice to see him, see him as a person. I thought you really did a good job bringing that out, you know. So I'm glad. I really respect what you're doing, and thanks so much for having me on here. And also thanks to everybody in virtual land. It's nice virtually meeting you all.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sure
Um,
some of you I know in person too.
oh yeah, yeah. And hello to everybody who we know for real, not
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah.
Facebook, but in the actual real world. Hello. I know a few of them will be watching for sure.
Yeah.
And come back, man. Next, after January gives you the next album idea and that gets rolling and you get that out, come back on and we'll do
Will
this.
do. Absolutely love to. Thank you.
Excellent, man. Kevin, it's always good seeing you, my friend. Thanks for coming on.